Welcome everybody to Wall Street Reporter's next Super Stock live stream, where we bring you those stocks which have that 10x to 100x upside potential. Companies going after massive multi-billion-dollar market opportunities that are at a key inflection point with multiple catalysts in place. And that brings us to Aditxt, ADTX on NASDAQ, and the CEO, Amro Albana. Amro, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate all you're doing. Thank you.
Amro, so look, I mean, I think the introduction kind of epitomizes Aditxt. I mean, you know, and also deep value right now, which I want to get into. Again, the stock is trading at, you know, valuation of, you know, $5 million market cap right now, and you know, based on everything you have, the assets, which you know we want to get into, the catalyst. I think it's a very exciting time for investors. I think this is really the inflection point, or as we call, you know, the stock is in the 10 bagger window. You know, you got everything lined up, so we just need you to, you know, hit it out of the park now. So with that said, for anybody new here, we got a lot of new people watching. Can you tell us what's kind of the business model of Aditxt? What do you do in the healthcare space?
We accelerate promising innovation, Jack. That's as simple as that. We are publicly owned innovation accelerator company. Reality is there are innovations out there that hold the promise of addressing some of our most pressing health challenges: autoimmunity, cancer, women's health, you name it. And those innovations typically do not get the opportunity to be commercialized. So we founded Aditxt as a publicly owned company to advance some of these most promising innovations, again, that could address autoimmunity or cancer. That's what Aditxt is all about.
Okay, so you have a couple of different subsidiaries. You have an acquisition coming up. Tell us about the different, you know, the different assets that are inside of the company right now.
So we currently have two subsidiaries, Autoimmunity, which is going after autoimmunity, and we have Potential, which is going after early disease detection, starting with prostate cancer or cancer in general, but starting with prostate cancer and endometriosis. Those are the two existing subsidiaries right now, and we'll talk a little bit more in details. And then we have a pending acquisition, Evofem. Evofem is also a publicly traded company focused on women's health. They are revenue generating. They reported almost $20 million last year. Evofem is truly an excellent example of our business model and how critical it is for companies like Evofem. Evofem holds tremendous opportunity, we believe, just like our other companies, and making it part of Aditxt is key for them realizing their true potential and true opportunities. And again, we'll talk about each company in more detail. So these are the two that we currently have, and Evofem with a target closing by end of September.
Okay, so that's very interesting. So Potential and Autoimmunity, those are still early stage. Those are just I guess, you know, they're going, you know, you're advancing them towards commercialization, but we'll kind of talk about where they are. But with Evofem, you're actually, you know, once that deal closes, you're actually going to be a revenue generating company. Aditxt will be a revenue generating company. So they're doing roughly, we're saying $20 million in revenues. So look, what are the comps in the space? And again, women's health space, like in healthcare companies, what are the multiples for revenues typically?
Right, and you know, again, I mean, obviously, I always have to mention this. There are certain conditions that we have to meet to be able to close it, including shareholder approval. Their shareholders have to approve the transaction, senior notes, so on and so forth, and that's all reported publicly. But you know, when you look at comps, I think when you start looking at women's health in general, this is an area that truly has seen, you know, really not much attention when it comes to innovations. And Evofem is well positioned to begin addressing, you know, this field, starting with non-hormonal birth control. It's an FDA-approved product, and in fact, they also acquired another FDA-approved product, Solosec, with our support last year. So when you talk about comp, I mean, it really depends whether you're looking at it based on revenue, multiple revenues, whether you're looking at it as multiple of EBITDAs, or whether you're looking at it as a growth comp of what potentially Evofem can be. So without providing guidance on Evofem or any projections, look, $20 million is what they reported end of 2024, 19 million and change. where we see Evofem going, expanding their product portfolio, which is definitely something we're looking at, and we've shown that we expanded or supported them expanding their product portfolio with SoloSec, and expanding their market share in the US and abroad. And in fact, they also just announced another relationship to begin expanding outside the US. So whether you're looking at comps from revenue, EBITDA, or potential, Jack, still, it's a great opportunity that can be realized, we believe.
Okay, but so we're talking about basically what, 5 times the revenues, 10 times, 10x revenues, the multiples. What are the comps? I think they're somewhere in the between 5 and 10x or more.
It can be. It certainly can be. I mean, again, without providing any guidance on what the value could be. I mean, look, if it's a growth story, then you're going to start seeing multiples to be higher because there is a lot of room for growth. With product portfolio, expanding their product portfolio and expanding their markets, then I believe that your multiples will be higher because it's going to be based on growth, not steady growth. That's it.
Okay. So you have a plan to basically to scale up their business, because it's kind of like a platform, right? It's kind of like a platform company where you can have other products in there, etc.
Exactly. Whether you're talking about retail outlets that they have, whether KOLs, whether it's a physician network, that takes quite a bit of time and investment to have a platform like Evofem. Not to mention, really starting with a team that is committed and understands women's health. So Sandra and her team, Sandra's being the CEO, she understands that field, and that's really what we look for in Aditxt, is a team and leadership that understands the market, and with our support, they can grow in that market. But just on Evofem, which again, I know we'll talk about Persanta and Adimune here, with Evofem, assuming we close the transaction, Jack, now Aditxt transitions from speculative stage company, right? Many microcap companies, to a company that can show real fundamentals in terms of income statement, balance sheet, and that's where we're pushing Aditxt towards, fundamentals beyond speculative stage, and that's key for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean that's where the inflection point happens. Now, what about? Let's talk about. Tell us a little bit more. Maybe we can get into some details about Adimune, Persanta. Drill down to some of the details. What do those subsidiaries do?
Sure. So let me take it in this order, because with Evofem, if we close the transaction, that becomes the first revenue generating under Aditxt, right? And we discussed what they reported last year. So let's begin with Persanta, because Persanta is near commercialization. And the whole concept of Persanta, and the reason we actually did the acquisition, the asset acquisition, a couple of them that we did last year, is the fact that we believe the best way to address a disease has to begin with early detection. I mean, let's take cancer. I think all your viewers right now, they agree with the fact that the earlier you detect cancer, the better. I think that's a fact that we all agree. And the word cancer, nobody wants to hear. So imagine if we have the ability to early detect cancer with more precision. So with our acquisition of the Mitomic platform, which basically uses mitochondrial DNA to detect cancer, we're positioning Persanta where we can bring this platform to commercialization as early as end of the year or Q1 of 2026. The key is to have existing infrastructure, and that's really important for your audience to understand that we're not talking about ideas. We're not talking about just inspiration. Persanta has an existing infrastructure, including CLIA/CAP monitoring center laboratory in Richmond, Virginia, with qualified staff that's pushing towards validating the assay, that basically the test. So our goal is by end of this year or Q1 of next year for Persanta to transition to commercialization. Yet another inflection point for Aditxt that it's in the near term, relatively speaking.
So what they need? What's the path from where we are now to get to that FDA clearance? What are the milestones between now and next 6 months, let's call it?
Right. So regulatory approval, I'm glad you asked that question. It's not really an FDA process. It's a CLIA cap, which is required by laboratories, where the test is not being conducted by the consumer. It's actually being processed inside our lab. So you have to have very rigorous regulations like CLIA and CAP, including the staff, the team, the infrastructure, the way we validate the tests. And that's in place. And that's what the team is doing right now to validate those to go commercial by end of the year or Q1. Once you go commercial, we start, obviously, once we're ready, we start engaging with distributors to be able to bring those tests to the, commercially in the US, Europe, and beyond. So Persanta is near commercialization.
Okay, so there is no, you don't need FDA approval for this. You're ready to go. What kind of cancers? What kind of diseases does this detect?
So we're starting with prostate cancer as a test, and while it's not oncology related test, it's endometriosis. So endometriosis is the second test that we're gonna bring up, and it's a women's health related. And now that gives you an example, Jack, actually, of how our companies can also work together, where Persanta launching endometriosis with Evofem can also be a channel for this test because it's related to women's health.
Synergies. You have cross-marketing synergies. Okay.
So these are the first two tests, and then we're planning lung cancer and other types of ovarian cancer, breast cancer beyond the initial launch.
And how would this differentiate? How do you differentiate from like other diagnostics out there in the market like this?
Right. So we actually have publications to show why mitochondrial DNA can be used for earlier detection with more precision. That's going to be key. And especially when it comes to cancer, like I mentioned, the key is going to be early detection with precision, and that's really the differentiation between us, Persanta in particular, and other tests. We, from our point of view right now, and even based on some data points from the company that we acquired the asset from, MDNA, we know that there is interest in the market. There is no doubt that there is interest in the market. The question is how fast we can get it out there to really transition to this commercialization stage. Okay.
So you're entering commercialization. You could be again, the commercialization will start, we're already in July almost. So, 4, 5, 6 months from now is when you can start generating revenues. How big is the opportunity in terms of can you talk about, like, what do you might be able to generate, like, year one or long term, 2-3 years out? What do you see as the upside potential here?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I'll provide data points without providing projections. Again, it's something that we avoid, but I'll provide data points. Look, right now there is a range when it comes to the test. It's probably about $200 to $400 per test, generally speaking. Obviously, there are always exceptions, but that just gives you a little bit of concept of what we're looking at. Potentially, we can bring the cost as low as $40. Again, there are always more specifics, but I'm just providing general idea of what the test could be priced at, what the cost is. There is overhead and all kinds of stuff. But when it comes to cancer, Jack, again, whether anyone who's listening to this, we all understand that cancer can affect every single person on this earth, period. This is not about addressable market. This is not about target market. Every single person does not want to hear the word cancer, whether it's about their family members, loved ones, themselves. So the market does exist. The question is, how fast can we push to get these products out and begin developing new products? The price point you got to keep in mind, obviously, is market dependent. I mean, there are, once we go international, there will be some limitations on pricing. But is it 100,000 tests a year? Is it 1 million tests a year? Is it 10 million tests a year? Is it 20, 30 million tests a year? Right? But it just provides enough data points to begin to understand that if things work according to plans, you understand that the opportunity we're looking at is not small opportunity.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. Okay, so that's so basically you have a couple of months from now you could have Evofem, which is already generating revenue. I mean, 6 months from now you could be in a position where you have Evofem generating again, run rate of 20 million plus. You could have this cancer detection business, which again revenue generating. You can't say just yet. You don't want to make projections, but it could be could be big. We'll know probably. Maybe within a couple of months after launch, how things are looking. Now, what about Adtimmune? Tell us about that business.
Yeah, Adtimmune, I describe it as the sleeping giant. Adtimmune is a therapeutic. So by its definition, therapeutics normally take longer time, right? And you gotta begin with the challenge. Aditxt, we always look at what the opportunity is based on the challenge that exists out there. So autoimmunity, whether it's type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, psoriasis, you name it, there are 80 to 100 different autoimmune diseases. Generally speaking, the approach has been, one form or another of immunosuppression. So your immune system is attacking your own cells, and you get some type of immunosuppressions to slow down the rejection by your own immune system. The whole concept of Adtimmune and what it's working on, imagine if we can retrain your immune system to stop it from attacking your own tissues instead of using immunosuppressants. That's the bigness of Adtimmune. Now, how, I will say, how real is it and how big is it, right? Mm-hmm. So, yep. With Adtimmune, since the acquisition of the assets, and we've been pushing, our team has been pushing forward. We brought it from basically set of patents, set of IP, and yes, there was some data, but that was pretty early stage to the point where we're pushing to file with regulatory as early as Q4 of this year to begin the first human trials first half of 2026. So we're not talking about 5 years from now or 10 years from now. We're talking about human trials, assuming we get approvals, of course, in the US with the FDA and in Europe. So Europe, we're looking at type 1 diabetes and psoriasis. In the US, we're looking at stiff person syndrome, working with the Mayo Clinic. Again, that's public stuff that's out there. So getting into human trials is a major inflection point for a company like Adtimmune, right? And getting that approval. Of course, the next inflection point will be to show safety. The next inflection point will be to show efficacy. And you can see where Adtimmune can be. So starting with Evofem, right? Revenue generating, if we close it, revenue generating, and it's all about growth and expansion. Then you're followed by Persanta, near commercialization, switching from pre-revenue to revenues with addressing cancer and early cancer detection. Followed by Adtimmune, which is looking at filing with regulatory Q4 with the goal of getting into human trials in first half of 2026. So you can see how many inflection points we have, and in near term where it's not 5 years from now or 10 years from now. That's really where Aditxt as a company is.
Yeah, so it looks like, again, multiple shots on goal. Again, these are near-term catalysts. All of these are, potentially, billion-dollar market opportunities. Again, they're still early stage, Evofem, revenue generating, but still relatively early stage. Because I think they went into commercialization not too long ago. The company hasn't been around that long, right? Evofem.
Evofem, or I'm sorry, Persanta.
Evofem as a revenue commercialization
Yeah, they early 2020s, so 2021, 2022, I believe. So yeah, relatively young when it comes to products on the market.
And then you have Persanta, Adtimmune. So Adtimmune, this space, again, what are the comps in the space, like other autoimmune companies at that early stage? Let's call it preclinical or phase 1. What are these things? What are these stocks trading for?
Yeah. So look, again, I don't want to provide any guidance in terms of share price or forecast, but I can provide data points, right? Autoimmunity is obviously a major health challenge, and represents a major opportunity, no doubt. Type 1 diabetes, psoriasis, multiple sclerosis, so on and so forth. So from our point of view, Jack, we do not see Aditxt driving Adtimmune all the way to commercialization, meaning actually selling drugs in hospitals and pharmacies. We're not. Addimmune is slightly different, where our goal is to actually get it to the point where it's in human trials, show safety. If we do show safety, and if we do show efficacy, you partner with a major pharma to actually come in for a co-development licensing deal. So online, you can look at some of the comps. You typically see multi-billion-dollar deal that is milestone based. So you finish, if you show safety, here is a payment. If you show efficacy, here is a payment. If you get to commercialization, there is royalty. So those deals exist. And when it comes to immune modulation, which is the area that Addimmune is, I can tell you, relatively speaking, very, very few competitors, and the field is hungry for new approach to autoimmunity, right? So our plan, again, with Addimmune, we don't, it's really not our DNA, no pun intended, to take it all the way to pharmacies. It's important for us to get it to trials, show safety if we can, show efficacy if we can, and that becomes our capitalization event.
Okay, so interesting. Okay, so basically, so you want to develop it, but you're not going to become a pharma company. But Evofem is basically a pharma company. Evofem. I mean, basically, it's a.
So that's actually what's nice about Aditxt as a model. So you have Evofem, which is more revenue and revenue growth, right? Then you have Persanta, which is the same thing, revenue and revenue growth, and you have Addimmune, which is slightly different, where it becomes more of a special event type. If we do a co-development deal and it's a substantial deal, it's a different model that has these mix revenues, income statement, and some of these special capitalization events.
So Emer, it's really interesting because what you're really doing, it's kind of like, again, you're finding these different assets, creating value, right? So so really the company is more like a deal shop, right? You're looking for these opportunities, and you create. These are all potentially unicorns, right? These are little baby unicorns potentially, right? Early stage unicorns, and you have like this little like a unicorn farm. It's not just one potential unicorn. You have multiple little baby unicorns, and then you see how they're going to actually grow. What size they're going to grow to. So the question is, would you consider, in terms of creating the value, it seems like there would be much more value created if you actually would be able to have you given thought to maybe spinning these out as independent companies as a dividend to shareholders? Because we've seen that model work really well for companies in the past.
Quick answer is yes. That's our, again, not to sound, it's ABC. We acquire, we build, we capitalize, right? So we bring a company that we truly believe can address a major opportunity, but requires the business infrastructure, right? The business infrastructure, not just capital. I mean, we're young, we need capital just like anyone else, but requires innovation, requires operational scalability, requires manufacturing, requires maybe communications, requires to be a public company, access to capital markets. Aditxt brings this environment to these companies that can truly achieve major milestone, bring them in house, build them, and spin them off. That could be a co-development licensing deal, could be an acquisition, it even could be an IPO in the case of Persanta, right? And
I see, like, for example, I was just talking to another one of our other companies. So we've seen different companies in different industries kind of do this model. Like there was one back in the day, Safeguard Scientific, which was huge home run. That was like 100-bagger stock, or much more actually. And they were doing spin outs as dividends to their shareholders every like a year or 2 years. Shareholders would get a spin out, a dividend of one of these assets. Then we see right now, who's done this very well is Interactive Corp, IAC, which was originally I think it was like a 70-cent stock, and then went to like $200 or more with splits and all that. But they've spun out like they're the big internet company. I think it was Expedia, Match Group, what did they just do? They just did Vimeo. So a bunch of these other things. So those are all, and some they spun out as dividends to shareholders. Others, like you're saying, they sold off, they did whatever to create value. But the main thing was to find these kind of assets. They were doing it in the media space, the .com space, e-commerce space, whatever. You're doing it in the healthcare space, essentially.
Yeah,
same
another good example of the model is Roivant, ROIV, right? Roivant is look, if you look at their history, and I believe their inflection point was their first spinoff or first monetization, right? It's a model again where our product, Aditxt product, is a business. You identify a business with opportunity, you build it, you spin them off. That's actually our product, right? And we must show that first success, first monetization, right? Where now you can begin. We all understand how it works. If you can show stakeholders that this model actually works, starting with one, then you'll have more opportunities at bringing in more assets, more capital, more expertise, and off we go. And that's really key, I believe, Jack, especially in an environment like this. When it comes to biotech, we all understand, in general, again, especially for a small company trying to commercialize a single molecule, it's a binary outcome. It either goes big or it goes nowhere, right? Aditxt is what we believe is an approach that's desperately needed to not just bet on one technology. You have multiple innovations with the right environment to increase the probability of success. That's why we put Aditxt. And it being a public company, the reason we wanted to be a public company is to provide the opportunity for those investors that are interested to become a part of this model with multiple opportunities, right? And as a public company, there's the reporting, transparency, everything that comes as part of a public company, including obviously all the disclosures we have to make.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of, again, it's very similar. Again, I'm using IAC, Roivant. I know IAC. I remember they've been around almost 30 years. They've had a phenomenal creation of value. It was, I don't know, multiple hundred bagger. And Roivant, so there is massive upside potential here. Can you tell us a little bit about, your background kind of and the team that you have that's going to be putting, creating this value here in all these different assets?
Yeah, this type of company, especially something like Aditxt, requires multidiscipline team. Absolutely. We are entrepreneurs. We are innovators. We're biotech scientists. We're operational team. We understand manufacturing. We understand M&A. We understand regulatory environment and running a public company. All that has to come into one and converge in one team to be able to do something like this, Jack. And I'll tell you, it's not just the Aditxt team. It's critical for us to highlight the strength of Aditxt can only be achieved by the strength of the team of each company. So Adimune, it's run and led by Dr. Friedrich Kapp. When it comes to therapeutic development, he knows the path, and we are in a role to support him. When it comes to Persanta, it's led by Chris, who is the president of the company. He understands the diagnostic industry. And when it comes to Evofem, run by Sandra and her team. So the convergence of a team that is focused on building businesses in partnership with a team at the company, at the subsidiary level that understands the vertical is key to the success of a model like Aditxt.
Yeah, no, this is very interesting. I mean, again, the thing that I'm looking at purely from the investor's perspective. What I like about this is, again, for investors, the price you pay is, that's the most important thing, the entry point. Right now the stock is trading at a $5 million valuation with all these assets. Some are early stage, some are and I think part of the problem and part of the big opportunity is the market's not quite sure how to value this, right? Because Evofem hasn't closed yet. There's things out there. There's unknowns. There's unknown variables. Yep. You have product. You have Persanta. That's again 6 months out to commercialization. You have Adimune, again early stage. I think, frankly, if you had just only Adimune in the company, this thing would be worth at least $5 million by itself. So, like, the stock is deeply undervalued because you have these different assets, and the market again doesn't quite understand what to make of it just yet. Obviously, the stock is starting to move. There's more eyeballs on it as we see more milestones. This is the way these things grow. People, all of a sudden, the momentum starts. Amra, I want to ask you, what is your vision? What's your vision for, like, what will Aditxt look like? Again, assuming everything goes right, which it never does, but let's say assuming everything goes right, what will the company look like 2 years from now?
So you look at the two key components of Aditxt in order to be able to paint a picture of what the company could look like. One, showing that we can identify a true opportunity and a true challenge, and we can provide a real solution, real life solution that Aditxt has delivered. And that will open up the floodgates for other opportunities once you show success in autoimmunity. Imagine Aditxt as a company, as a young company, unknown company, and I appreciate your efforts in helping us create this awareness. Imagine Aditxt as a company and as a model, bringing a potential therapeutic and a potential cure for autoimmunity, or for cancer detection, or for women-related diseases, and showing that we have many more that we can actually access, whether it's Down syndrome or any other diseases that we're contemplating. That's number one, Jack. But number two, having shareholders engaged in the process is key. The reason we're doing this, look, I mean, again, we're a young company, but when you and I talked, I said there is nothing more I want than engaging our shareholders and stakeholders. Yeah. We want them to know what the opportunity is, and we want them to know what the challenges are. So 2 or 3 years from now, imagine having having a broad base of shareholders where we're able to share with them the things that are happening and the things that we are working on. So they're not just learning about the company through their Ks and Qs, but they're truly engaged in the whole process, because that's going to be key to the success and the scalability of Aditxt. And
especially if you do a couple of spin-outs as dividends, then I think that's the real inflection point. That really puts you on the map. I think then you create that snowball, which we've seen with IA. Again, I'm using IAC as the example, Interactive Corp, Safeguard, I think Roivant. Did Roivant, did they do a dividend or a spin out of some of their assets?
I don't know specifically,
okay.
But look, when it comes to dividends, I mean, that is, again, that would be one of the paths that we would absolutely consider, because again, it's a matter of building a product and spinning off the product, capitalizing the product back.
You have,
right?
And you already have. I mean, you have. Again, my opinion, I think these are early stage, but these are assets that could be spun off separately. You would have much more value. Like, really, I think this is down the road. This could be 6 months, 9 months out. But I think this is one of the potentials that you have here. Is again, from an investor's perspective, you're paying $5 million for this. The parts are worth more than the whole right now. I think the parts separately would be worth $25 million easily, just today's market, easily. Without Evo from closing just yet. So.
Yeah, look, as I said earlier, it's how real and how big could it be, right?
Right.
So with Aditxt, it certainly is a model that we can show we've taken the path to make sure that Persanta is near commercialization. Takes a long time and investment and time to get it to that point. Adimune, near regulatory submission, right? Evofem, hopefully near closing. And when you look at the model, now you start to see how real this could be. And when it comes to how big it could be, look, again, autoimmunity, cancer, women's health, people can draw their own conclusion of the types of, opportunities that we are pursuing.
Yeah. So yeah, look, I mean, our audience, our audience is looking for these 10 baggers, stocks that can become 10x, 100x, and it looks like you have a path to get there. There is a path to get there. I think just even closing the Evofem deal, again, they're doing 20 million. I think you could add some value. Again, we'll see, but I think you could add some value, and where the thing should be inside of Aditxt. And again, because it's kind of a special situation, but I believe that once you close that deal, the Aditxt should be worth 5x their revenue, so at least 100 million, because plus your other the pipeline of opportunities that you have. So you have almost a built-in. It's a 20 bagger. It's a 20x upside from here potentially, just short term. Again, this is high risk. This is not a guarantee. All these stocks, again, any stock can go to zero. This is pure public venture capital. That's what this stock is. ADTX.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a venture capital investment. I mean, it could either become 100 bagger. It could, again, you can make 100 times the money, or it could go to zero. We don't know. It could be, anywhere on that spectrum, which is what makes it interesting, right? We've had stocks literally go 100x, 500x, not 500%, but 500 times. It took some years, but they happen. Like Taser, now known as Axon. MicroStrategy was one of our early clients. But anyway,
MicroStrategy was one of your other clients.
Yeah. What's his name? Michael Saylor. This is a long time ago. I mean, I don't know if you know this. I'm actually kind of old. Michael Saylor was one of our clients in the early on when they started out, and it was the .com. The stock went up literally 100x. The guy. I mean, this guy's been at it for almost 30 years now. Michael Saylor.
Yeah, MicroStrategy. Yeah.
Unbelievable salesman, and he's had the same thing forever. Everybody, he's had all the doubters, haters, people saying, "Oh, it's a scam, it's this and that," and it's proven to be one of the big winners of all time. Just like that Axon, a lot of companies. So this you could be the next MicroStrategy. I mean, in the healthcare space, there's a lot of opportunities. Safeguard Scientific also was one of our clients, but we worked with them when they were already mature. We weren't with them, because I think they started in the 1950s or 60s. But that was a massive success. So bottom line is, you got multiple shots. This stock has multiple paths for that 10 bagger upside. Again, I love the fact that right now people can get in at a 5 million valuation right here. It's dirt cheap. Okay, Amra, I want to ask you. Okay, so let's talk about what I think what the market wants to know is, what are the upcoming catalysts? In other words, what do you have coming up in the next? I don't know if you want to share too much, but let's say the next 90 days, if you can give us kind of a roadmap of what the market could expect in terms of news flow.
Right. So obviously, I'm going to stick to things that we've talked about publicly as far as milestones, right? So Evofem closing would be a major milestone for us. It comes with its own conditions, and I think that would be a major milestone for us. Evofem, since we're talking about them, when it comes to expanding their product portfolio and expanding their distribution in the U.S. and internationally, in fact, they just announced something a couple days ago. So those are milestones when it comes to growing Evofem. Persanta, when it comes to validation, right? Completing the validation and going commercial would be a major milestone for Persanta. And that's within, let's talk about the next, maybe from now until end of the year. Those are the type of things that we talked about publicly before. Filing and submitting regulatory approval for Aditxt would be a major milestone. Now, whether or not we can get approval, within that time, I don't know. But if we do, that becomes a major inflection point. So the nice thing about, the important thing here, Jack, about Aditxt is, again, we're not a single molecule company. We're not a single technology company where milestones come, every once in a while. We have multiple activities, multiple companies, and multiple milestones. And we truly, our DNA, again, no pun intended, is to share with our stakeholders what we plan. And as we move forward, we'll share both, the things that we can accomplish and the things that we were not able to accomplish. But it's an important 6 months for the company. This year is an important year to transition Aditxt beyond speculative stage.
Okay, no, very interesting. And what about, again, you have probably a pipeline of deals, other opportunities you're looking at, like what types of situations are you looking at, and can we expect to see any more, you picking up any more additional assets into this unicorn farm?
So it is our business model to always be on the lookout for future assets, right? So diagnostic space is certainly one, therapeutics, additional products for existing companies like women, like Evofem. Look, AI, no one, you can't ignore AI when it comes to health, and what's happening right now with some of the assets that really are looking for home is pretty fascinating. So yeah, there is, I would say there is no shortage of promising innovations out there. They would just be, they would need the right business environment and business infrastructure to realize that value. So the answer is yes, Jack. We're always on the lookout for new assets.
Okay, excellent. Admiral, let's wrap up. One of the questions I always like to ask CEOs is, in your opinion, what are the top 3 reasons why investors should consider ADTX today?
Look, as an investor, not traders. I will separate traders. Traders will do what traders will do, but as an investor, if you're understanding the venture nature of Aditxt, you got to really begin with the issues and the challenges we're addressing. Is autoimmunity a real challenge? The answer is 100% yes. Is cancer a real challenge? 100% yes. Women's health, is it an opportunity that deserves attention? The answer is yes. So that's number one. You got to ask yourself how big the opportunities are, number one. And I believe we are pursuing major opportunities in the marketplace. Then number two, how real is Aditxt? Is it a PowerPoint presentation, or have we done so much work to position us for success? And the data is out there. People can look at it. Look at what we've done with Persanta, what we've done with Adimune, what we're doing with Evofem, right? And then finally, the value. Look, $5 million. Make of it what you will. It's $5 million. Right?
It's free. I mean, you're basically getting the stock for free.
And I think there are reasons, even at a macro level, with market conditions right now and access to capital, and there are, right? But, we're not a billion-dollar company. And, a company like us, we must show that first success, I believe, to be able to gain momentum. So from an investor point of view, they have to value the opportunity, value how real it is and what it is, and value the risk. And they can make that determination as far as participating in a company like Aditxt.
Actually, Amr, I think you brought this up several times. I think it's a very important point that, I think what the market is waiting for, right? The real inflection point, like, again, you have these things up. The real inflection point is when you have that one event, which is going to, really give you that credibility where the market's going to be excited about it. Again, that could be closing the Evofem deal. That could be number one. But it could be any of these things, because, the reality is the company's still early stage, right? And there's a lot of biotech companies, there's literally hundreds of biotech, health tech companies, early stage. They all have promises or whatever. But once you actually deliver something tangible, a real milestone, again, I think the Evofem deal, which should be relatively easy to do, and that's coming up, 2 months. We're 2 months away from that almost. That puts you on the map, and that kind of like people wake up, and then all of a sudden, the valuation of the stock explodes because people say, okay, we've seen what they've done. What else can they do? So the opportunity, again, I'm looking at it from the investor's perspective. The opportunity is, it's like Wayne Gretzky, the great hockey player. They asked him, Wayne, how did you become so successful as a hockey player? And he said, most hockey players, they skate after the puck. They chase after the puck. I go to where I know the puck is heading. So you have to be positioned early. You got to be like, the surfer. You got to be in the water because you can get an early, and you got to be in the water ready for that wave to happen. Where most investors are going to be they're on the sand. They're on the beach right now. They're waiting for the wave. But by the time they run in, the thing could be already 10x higher. And again, let me repeat for the millionth time is what I love about these stocks when they're in a low valuation at let's say a 5 million where you are right now is even if the stock goes up 1,000%, it goes up 10x, you're still at only a $50 million valuation, which is cheap in the biotech space. It would be actually very cheap, especially if you with the closing of Evofem, because but that in itself it should be worth, I don't know, 5x, 100 million by itself. If you can add some value. Anyway, I don't want to get too far ahead, but Emerald. So okay, bottom line is, what kind of news flow? I asked about the news flow, but you have some news that we can expect over the next couple of weeks that people should pay attention to.
So it's the milestones that we talked about publicly, Jack. And again, we truly we like to share the news and the news flow. As when they happen, of course. Again, Evofem, as we accomplish even smaller milestones, we like to go out and we like to put them out there. Persanta, again, going with validation. So look, I mean, the way I know I'm not answering your question directly, but milestones, we want to announce them, and we do announce.
I like that. It's gonna be a surprise. It's gonna be a surprise. But I'm looking at your stock. There has been steady news flow, which is important. It's not like the company. There's a regular news flow, so it's good. I think it's actually, Amar, what you're doing is actually very smart. Don't tell people what's going to happen, because then it's going to be baked into the stock. This way, if there's a surprise, then the stock could run because it was a surprise. That's so it's always that buy the rumor, sell the news thing. So okay, any questions? We have we got a bunch of people watching. We don't have any. We have any questions coming up here? No questions. Okay, Amro, I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for joining the live stream, and we'll have you back on probably after the next news event.
That sounds good. Thanks again, Jack. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you again. We'll see you all in the next one.